Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Carrie Drummond, and I'm the Marketing Coordinator for Ansible here at Red Hat. Today, we're excited to share an Ansible developer and ecosystem story presented by Tim Appnel, Senior Principal Product Manager for Ansible. Before we begin, I did want to cover a few housekeeping items. All attendees of the webinar are on mute. Any questions that come up during the presentation can be asked using the Q&A feature. You type your question in there, and we will have time for those questions at the end of the webinar. We'll address as many as possible. We are also recording this webinar, and we will share a link to the recording in the next day. Now, without further ado, I will turn it over to Tim to get us started.
Great, thanks, Carrie. Hello, everyone. As Carrie said, my name is Tim Appnel, and I'm one of the product managers here at Ansible. And I'm going to be talking about where we're going with Ansible. So this presentation is about what we've been observing and thinking about and where we're going to be steering Ansible over the coming years. And I want to stress that last phrase, the coming years. This is a long-term initiative and plan that I'm going to be talking about. This is something we're going to be rolling out incrementally over time and allowing for a gradual transition and testing period as much as we can. So the things I'm going to show you are high level. They're very much in the works, but you know, we're not going to be throwing a switch one day very soon and everything's going to change. You know, we have a long ways to go on this, and there's a lot of details for us to work out, but we really wanted to be open and transparent about what we're thinking and where we're heading with Ansible. And we need your feedback. We need the community and our users' feedbacks and input on this. So this is why I'm talking about this now. You'll be hearing a lot more about these topics that I'll be covering in this presentation. So with that, let me begin. I want to set some context of where we're going here with Ansible at this point. So this is the first commit ever to Ansible. And like I said, I just want to take a brief moment here to reflect on the philosophy and the design principles that Ansible was founded upon, because I really think this context informs how we move forward and how Ansible evolves while still maintaining what makes Ansible and its community of users and developers so great and to have accomplished so much. So from the beginning, Ansible was designed to be a frictionless automation tool using the philosophy of being simple, powerful, and agentless. This led to widespread adoption. And a lot of the company's accomplishments have a lot to do with adhering to this philosophy and just accomplishing not only so much in the open source community, but in the IT industry itself. Another thing that really contributed to all the accomplishments that Ansible has achieved to date is that the code base was designed for contribution from the very beginning. It was created with the notion of being pluggable and providing a lot of opportunity for many people at different skill levels to contribute to that development and to using Ansible. Ansible is never a monolith. It was designed to provide also a lot of option value to its users. Things like, you know, if I invest my time in Ansible and using Ansible, what do I get out of it? Those sorts of things. So the more contributors and the more users meant that this code base would continue to grow, continue to thrive, continue to evolve. It lives on. So this too contributed to Ansible's accomplishments to date. And this quote I have up here comes from a great academic paper on open source and participation and really what it means. And a lot of that goes into the thinking that's behind how Ansible itself has been designed. Another thing that really contributed to Ansible's success and what it is today is the concept of batteries included. This comes from Python, the language that Ansible itself is primarily written in. And Ansible's long maintained this philosophy itself of having a rich and versatile standard libraries that as soon as you installed Ansible was immediately available to you. You didn't have to go through through the process of downloading different packages and resolving what you were doing, what you needed for your playbook with your coworkers, when they tried to run your playbook, or someone halfway across the world that picked up a gist or a blog post that you wrote about what you were doing. So this approach, this batteries included approach that Ansible took from the very beginning, gave users a head start and this consistent baseline in automating with Ansible. And it's this philosophy that contributed heavily to making Ansible both simple and powerful at the same time. It allowed us to cover a lot, the combination of all these different philosophies has allowed us to cover a lot of different use cases and a lot of different usage for Ansible itself across a wide range of the entire IT operation and just open source in general. So hopefully you believe that Ansible has accomplished a lot since its first inception. If you haven't, if you don't believe me so far, provided here some vanity statistics. So just bear with me for a second as I talk about some of these things. One of the more recent accomplishments that we have is during the Octoverse report that the Ansible Core Engine project is #7 for unique contributors, and it even outpaced projects like Kubernetes, which was a surprise to us. But we have over 14,000 forks. There's 35,000 stars, 40,000 commits. We're seeing tens of thousands and even more downloads, clones of the repos happening. A lot is happening. It's a very strong, vibrant community out there. So again, it's great that we've all these things has contributed to this really strong community and it has made Ansible what it is today. So despite all of these accomplishments that we've seen with Ansible itself, the momentum, and despite all this momentum, we cannot become complacent. The growth of Ansible's contributions and its evolution is challenging our ability to scale to the demands of its usage out there and where and how Ansible is being used. So in some ways, you could say we're becoming a victim of our success. And I thought this quote here was very appropriate. It came from one of the earlier CEOs of IBM, that whenever an individual or business decides that success has been attained, progress stops. So that's to say that we realize that while we've accomplished a lot, we cannot become complacent and sit back. There are growing pains that this level of accomplishment and success has brought about. So all these things have been have contributed to the success and has served Ansible well, but we now have to look at all these other things that are now forming because of that level of accomplishment and activity that's happening inside of Ansible. And things are like the volume of contributions is starting to weigh down our ability to release. There have become bottlenecks to participating in the contribution of Ansible and in the open source process. There's a lot of different release cadences of the integrations that Ansible now has. We have, I think with the next release, we're going to just come in under 2,500 different modules running across that wide range of disciplines and use cases that we see, from networking to security to cloud containers to system administration. All these things are are covering all these different systems that are all releasing new functionality and upgrades and bug fixes and security fixes and things that we need to continue to incorporate into Ansible, and we want to get that functionality out to users as quickly as possible. But with this constant release cycle, it's becoming a challenge. There's also been dramatic expansion of the use cases over time. I've just listed out some of them, and we continue to be sometimes amazed by the different ways that people are and things that they are applying Ansible to. Taking a step back from that, we're also seeing that there's opportunity out there to provide more value to users in a lot of focus goes into modules. We see some into plugins, but we have things like we could be doing more with roles. We're seeing things like Ansible operators starting to form and pick up momentum. There's opportunity to do more there. And then another thing that we're starting to see is other projects and products beginning to embed Ansible as their automation engine. So these are all things that we're looking at and taking into consideration and starting to think about, well, what is the evolution of what we're doing, of where we're taking Ansible? What do we have to do as we see that beginning to take shape and form? So what does all this mean is what I'm saying. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and I think this sums up a lot of what we're going to be dealing with here. We have this car speeding down the road, and they're trying to change the tires on it and just not crash and burn as we go. So the first thing that we've come to realize as we took a step back and looked at what's happening with Ansible, how people are using it, what's the feedback that we're getting across all these different areas in the spectrum, is that Ansible's evolving and needs to become a platform for automation. This is not a reinvention of Ansible. It's an evolution. I think that's a key takeaway from this here. It's an evolution of what has helped Ansible accomplish so much thus far is just taking that next logical step here. Simply put, Ansible cannot live up to its full potential as a couple of discrete tools. We have to take steps to embrace the idea of Ansible as an automation platform, and that requires a mental shift in how Ansible is developed and to be more than just delivering, having a couple of projects or delivering a product or two. It's about creating and supporting that platform and encouraging participation in it. So that and at the same time of doing this and evolving this, we have to stay true to what Ansible is about, the same simple and frictionless way that we've allowed and enabled our users to automate. So once we embrace that idea of Ansible as a platform, we've come to realize that we're going to need to provide a few sane options to supplement the ease and simplicity of the batteries included distribution model. All right, so we're not saying here that we are killing batteries included. All right, so don't freak out on me here. Let me explain what we're saying here, because we know a lot of people are big fans of the batteries included model and want us to continue embracing that, and we are. But we need, the key word here is options. So the idea here is that the module system and the whole batteries included approach has been a significant contributing factor, and it served us well, but its success is starting to present some key challenges that we need to address. And that idea of just that single simple approach, that using that exclusively is just not enough. And we think that there's some room for improvement now at the volume and the size that Ansible is reaching in terms of its user base and its use cases. So all that growth and evolution over time is, presents challenges, but also presents new opportunities to continue to try to scale out what has made Ansible so successful and accomplished so much. So, like I said, we need to evolve and support these additional options where modules and plugins can be managed independently of the core engine to supplement that same ease and simplicity of the batteries included, that one package that gives you everything, gives you a lot of functionality, I should say, as soon as you install it. So what we're looking at and thinking about is how can we enable contributors and partners to release updates and functionality at their own cadence, rather than having to wait for the next release of Ansible Core or Ansible Tower here. So I'll explain and get into that a little bit more as we continue on. But this was another key thing we came to realize as we were thinking about, you know, where we go with Ansible and its future. So this broad shift of the platform and supporting that philosophy in that direction has some broad implications in ways both large and small. One of the first things that you have to realize, that we came to realize, is that the past assumptions under that exclusive batteries included distribution model are no longer, are not going to be valid, and we're not going to be able to rely on them going forward. So some of these current assumptions that we're able to make today under the batteries included approach is that we only care about what's in the Ansible develop repo and branch. We did not have to think about other versions, past versions. It's just, hey, when we are adding code, we only needed to work with what's in that particular repo and that particular branch. Another current assumption we've been able to make that's been very helpful to streamlining the development of Ansible is things like compatibility and namespace conflicts, and even quality checks on the code are managed through code review, through the watchful eye of our engineers and our committers that are able to look at everything and resolve these issues before they get merged into that one code repository. Another current assumption that we can make through that single repository and that batteries included approach is that it streamlines testing. We only need to test the current version that is under development. That's the only one that we're focused on and matters. We do not have to worry about when we introduce a new module that it works in a previous version or a whole minor version back, because we're only concerned again on the current state of the code in the develop branch. And then the other, and this is a smaller issue, but still nonetheless one that we had to think about, is the fact that the functionality, all these modules are in a single bundle and a single search path for all intents and purposes. So it also helped us streamline and avoid potential performance issues of having to search all over many drives and resolve where resources are located. So those are some of the current assumptions under this new mindset that we're going towards. These are the type of assumptions, though, that now become an issue that we have to think about and that we're going to need to adjust to, and are looking to how do we address these things. One of the first things we identified as we started thinking about where we're going with this is how do we manage namespace conflicts and compatibilities if we're allowing for people to bring content more easily, and by content I mean modules, plugins, roles, and hopefully other things in the future. How do we manage if two people name something the same way? What do we do about that? What do we do about those type of incompatibilities that could arise under the current model? We have to think about the initialization performance of if we have multiple sources, artifacts that we're going to have to pull the functionality from. What is the effect on the initialization that's happening there? We also have to think about other things such as quality control and testing. How do we try to keep that quality up? How do we keep these independent contributions working well, especially as we are iterating the core engine over time, or doing things with Tower. And lastly, we have to think about versioning, because now with these independent pieces of content living away from the core, they don't get to inherit the version of the core engine itself. So we have to think about how do we manage all that going forward. So it's not just assumptions changing inside of Ansible core. We also have to think about then this idea of this different mindset towards Ansible as a platform, and providing these few sane options to batteries included, also bring a number of new requirements that Ansible hasn't had to address up until now. And this here is just a brief summary. I'm going to drill into each one of these points here in a minute. We're going to have to think about a new packaging format for this Ansible content. And if you have a package, these artifacts, you're going to need a way to manage them. And you have to have a way also to develop what those artifacts are, and to test them, and to help developers do things quickly, more efficiently, and to help keep the quality up there. There's also opportunities out there in this expanding of Ansible as a platform to enhance what roles can do and how they can be used. And then if you have these artifacts, if you have these roles, and we are successful and continue to build a strong ecosystem of these things, you need a place to put them and to be able to find them. And that's where the Galaxy Hub at galaxy.ansible.com comes in. So let's drill into those. And the first thing here is the new packaging format. Like I said, so we're going to need, Ansible's going to need to provide a means of packaging and shipping this content that is independent and external to the core engine. When we first started looking at this and thinking about, okay, if we're going to provide a few same options to batteries included, and okay, we're going to need a way to package this, we started looking at a whole bunch of different things internally, existing systems and whatnot. Very quickly, some people said, well, what about roles? And what we found is that roles were really insufficient for what they needed to do. They are, the way that they're implemented, they load late. So certain types of plugins that need to load early really can't be in there. Roles can only be a single role. You can't handle multiple roles. That was a piece of feedback that we've been getting for quite some time, that people wanted to have a whole number of interdependent roles shipped together, be developed together, things like that. So we found that roles weren't sufficient. We looked at other package managers, and there were a whole host of issues. I could probably do a whole presentation on all the different things we looked at and found to be insufficient. So we said, all right, we're going to have to create a new package format for this. We want to keep it very much in the Ansible way, so it needs to be simple and lightweight and consistent. And we did draw a lot of the ideas and principles to the way roles work and how they're structured, so they remain consistent. And then, as I mentioned, that this was a request that we've had, and it just was sort of a no-brainer, so to speak, is that these packages need to be able to contain multiple Ansible modules, plugins, roles, and possibly more things. As I mentioned earlier, we see a lot of momentum behind these things called Ansible operators that are for Kubernetes and OpenShift systems there. So we wanted to do is have something that was flexible enough to adapt to other forms of content as they develop down the line. So what we came up with is something that we're calling Ansible Content Collections, or just collections for short. And a collection is going to be our unit of distribution and versioning of Ansible content. And a collection can contain one or many roles, modules, and plugins, even the module utility libraries that many modules rely upon, and hopefully, like I said, future content. And these collections, these artifacts, are installable as system resources or at the user level, or can even be project resources, or what you might call content adjacent resources, kind of like the way that you can have a roles directory that hangs off of your playbooks, that then you can, just use those roles right there. So what I have here is this stuff is still very much, well, it's very much in works. This is something that's coming soon in a release of Ansible today. What I'm showing you here is a preview of what they will, roughly what they're looking like these days, but details on this may change. But I just wanted to give you an idea of what we're talking about here. And this here is a directory structure of a example collection. We see that there's a Galaxy YAML file that's going to hold all the metadata telling you about the collection itself, what's in it and things like that Galaxy can process, but it's also general purpose metadata, so you know more. Where did this come from? What version is it? And things of that nature. And then in it, there can be a directory called plugins, and under those are more subdirectories that are other forms of plugins. Here we have an action plugin, a module utils, and a module itself. Again, these collections can also contain roles, and they can contain multiple roles. So here we have 2 roles, ping bootstrap and ping deploy. So like I said, these kind of look similar to roles, and in fact, the roles directory should be very familiar to anyone that's worked with and developed a role out there. So this is roughly what would a collection would look like, and it would then get built into an artifact that then can be shipped around to other users, to other systems. So just a quick preview here, just to give you an idea of where how you would then use these content collections, and also it shows off namespacing. As I mentioned before, that's an issue that we need to consider, which is 2 different people make a module or a filter or a role with the exact same name. How do you resolve and pick the one that you actually mean to use? And another consideration in that is in introducing namespacing is that we don't break the way Ansible's worked before, and we don't make it more verbose or difficult to use than the way Ansible worked before we introduced this. So this here's just a quick pseudo example playbook that shows some of the things that we're looking to introduce here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over the first section, collections, and talk about that. But here in the first task, we have a call to a module named ping, but it's not the ping that's built into Ansible itself. It's one coming from namespace Tima, and then a collection named pinger. So here, this is a fully qualified call to that specific ping module, excuse me, instead of calling any other one that might be in my system that's named ping, or the built-in one that's in ping. I'm sorry, that's in Ansible itself. The second task there, the Ansible.builtin.ping. So the built-in is the ping that is in the Ansible core distribution itself. So if you need to make sure that you are calling only that ping, you can fully qualify it that way, and the system will know to only go to the one inside of core, not any other one it finds on the outside. There's a third concept that's in there right now, which is a collection called legacy. And what legacy does is gives you a way to fully qualify and call a ping module the way that Ansible worked prior to version 2.8, which is going to be the next release we make, which will have some of this collection support in it. So if you really need that, we have a way of you doing that. Now, the fact is you don't need to do any namespacing today. Your playbooks, as they've worked in version 2.6 and 2.7, should run the exact same way in 2.8. You won't need any of this namespacing, and you can do exactly what you see there in the fourth task, which is just ping, and that will automatically assume that you are calling Ansible.legacy.ping the way that Ansible has worked in the past, and like I said, will continue to work, so that you don't have to do all this extra typing now and convert all your playbooks from the way that they used to work. So I want to go back up to the top here because it relates to this last task here, is we're introducing this section in the top of a play declaration where you can list out the collections that you want to use. And this works like a path, like a search path that you might have for Python or in Bash to find a binary. This is working the same way as that. So to try to cut down on your typing, we're giving you a way to declare which collections and in what order you want Ansible to look for a given piece of content, whether that's a module or a role or anything. So in this case here, in this collection section, it would first look in the tema.pinger, and then it would look in a collection called redhat.openping for any modules that are not fully qualified. So going back down to that last task, ping, with that collection section we have on top, it would look inside of tema.pinger.ping. And if it can't find that, it would then move on to redhat.open_ping. And if it didn't find that, it would actually then look in ansible.legacy for a ping module. So whichever it would find that first in, it would then load. This is just a way to cut down on the amount of typing that you may have to do inside of your playbooks. So this is just a rough preview. I'm breezing over this very quickly, and we'll probably be doing another webinar like this as collections are released and we're able to get more content, more detail out there about where we're going with content. But hopefully this gives you an idea of the thinking and what's to come very shortly inside of future Ansible releases. So I'm going to keep moving on here. All right, so that was collections and the package format. Now, if you have these packages and you have these artifacts that are being developed and moved around, you need a way to manage them. So we're going to have to think about new ways of a tool to how to manage that. And the first thing we started with immediately when we realized, well, we're going to have to create this, something like this, is that we looked at the Ansible Galaxy CLI tool and found that it was really insufficient. And really, that tool was never meant to be a package manager. I think a lot of people thought that, but that was never really the intention of it. We looked at trying to improve that and things and what we needed to do, and decide this is just not going to work, and we're better off looking at building a tool specifically for this this usage. So in going out to do that, we gave some thought into, package manager can be really difficult, painful if done incorrectly. What are we going to try to do here, and how can we avoid some of the issues that can happen in package management that makes life really difficult for users. So one of the things we wanted to do is really think about how do we minimize those inherent pitfalls to package management there. And so we want to prioritize simplicity over flexibility and package management norms here in what we're doing, and we're going to slowly work our way up, but really focus on that simplicity versus being able to do anything and everything. When we're going to focus strictly on management functions here, and not development. If you're familiar with the Ansible Galaxy command line tool, it kind of mixed parts of both in there and didn't really do one fully. We're going to focus this tool, this package manager, strictly on that management function. So this requirement is going to be addressed by a project called Mazer, and I have here the URL to the repository where you can see that tool being developed. It's right now a standalone project that's being developed and iterated on over there. Definitely check that out. Yeah. So moving on. So now we have a package manager, but besides providing alternative means to batteries included for managing these artifacts that could be added to the batteries included distribution, is that we need, it also necessitates tools that are going to encourage the effective development and testing of of quality contributions to the ecosystem. Being open source and mostly Python, Ansible core engines benefited from all the extensive developer tools and some of its own making for testing that repository, as one big mass, as the batteries included distribution. But when you're with things now becoming externalized and independent of that core engine, there's a need for additional tools that were expressly written for Ansible development and can embrace the existing development tools that are already out there in the Python and the PowerShell world, mostly as a convenience, but to also encourage that type of contribution and the quality of it. So so while those tools are going to be effective to the core engine, today they're somewhat insufficient to these new requirements of that independent developed distributed content. So we're going to need to provide better independent tooling for developing content and really encourage this participation and reuse and the stability of best practices the Ansible way as possible, and being simple and powerful and frictionless. So one of the things that we've already done, and this is something that we announced at Ansible Fest some months ago, was that we adopted Molecule. Molecule is a great community-run project that was put together, and we embraced it, and now I have adopted it. You can now find it under the Ansible account on GitHub as Molecule. We have a lot of work to do there. It's a great tool, great for testing roles today. A lot of people are already using it for testing, testing their Ansible content. But we're going to need to look at how do we add collection support to it? How can we better align how Molecule works, and when it lived off on its own as completely developed and led by the community? How do we integrate it more with the Ansible other tools that Red Hat maintains and leads on? So there's a lot of improvements coming. There's too many to list here. But another thing besides the collection support is we're looking at how do we take the tools that are under Ansible test and the lint and the sanity and tests and integrate them into Molecule, so that the same type of tools and standards that we apply to the Ansible core can easily be applied to content and the collections being developed and then tested with Molecule. So another thing too, very similar to Molecule itself, is that we adopted Ansible Lint. This is another great tool. It's a static analyzer for Ansible best practices and does some other checks. That too, like I said, has now been migrated under the Ansible account on GitHub. It's already been integrated into the new galaxy.ansible.com. If you've submitted anything there recently, you'd see now that a series of tests are run against it, and any type of issues are flagged in the output. And we've even tried to score it to give you end users that are grabbing content out of Galaxy some sense of the quality of the automation that's been done in there. So that's something we're going to continue working on by adding more rules and continue to add functionality to that tool. But we think it's really helpful to helping keep people following a consistent style and flagging issues of where they may could do something better, or something that'll be more effective to automating with Ansible. So one other thing worth mentioning is I've talked about broadening the opportunities of participation in the Ansible ecosystem and to extend Ansible's value. Ansible is going to, we see an opportunity to enhance what roles can do. So we're looking to achieve closer parity to how modules and plugins can be utilized, or how in automating, and it also needs to bring roles closer to how those work. So we need to provide facilities to enhance the portability of roles even further. and to really encourage their broad reuse without modification. So we're going to be addressing those with a few features to the core engine coming up in future releases. Particularly, we're looking at the ability to do argument spec validation similar to how modules work, so that as soon as you run a role, it can check to see if it has the variables, the inputs it needs to run effectively and to fail fast if it doesn't meet that spec, very similar to how the Ansible module system works today. If you give it a piece of base, you give a string to an argument that's expecting an integer, Ansible will immediately catch that and give you an error message to not even attempt to run any further logic. We're looking to add a similar thing to roles. Another thing we're looking at is the ability to do some type of ad hoc role execution, the ability to execute and run a role without having to build a playbook. We've seen a lot of people that build a playbook that just has a host selector and it calls a role, and that's the extent of their playbook. We want to try to avoid as a convenience, find a way to avoid that you can just grab a role, run it on host right from the command line or right from a UI widget inside of Tower. And then a third thing that came out of this is looking at is to provide a standardized way of doing embedded documentation inside of roles. We have it for modules, we have it for plugins. We want to have something like that, a standardized way so that roles can be documented and people that are trying to reuse it can understand what type of inputs do I have to give, what is this thing going to do, what are its requirements, its prereqs, things like that in a very standardized way. A lot of good role developers out there do that through a README, but the formatting of that is varied and standards or whatever each author makes up. So it's we want to try to come up with a more, like I said, standardized way of communicating that information. All right, so I've also mentioned that we want to enhance the Galaxy Hub, and some of this stuff has already been rolling out. And by the Galaxy Hub, I mean what you see at galaxy.ansible.com. We're going to be, in the near future, adding support for collections in Mazer so that people can start developing content as collections and putting them into Galaxy, and to be able to grab it and install it through Mazer. We're continuing to improve the search and the feedback and make user experience UI improvements to Galaxy itself. We're also this third point is one of the interesting, small but significant things that have come out of this work that we're doing, and how we're addressing it is that we have this issue that we've allowed. Galaxy has been roles allow for dashes, but now that we are introducing modules and plugins into collections, and those things are primarily Python. Python does not like dashes in the names of its packages and its names. So we're having to work through that incompatibility when you mix roles and plugins and modules together. The dash now becomes an issue for Python and the way that we've processed it. And again, this is probably this one little seemingly tiny item we could probably have a 1-hour discussion on, and it's we would still be talking, actually probably much longer than an hour, because we've spent significant amounts of time trying to figure out how to deal with this this issue. But moving on, the last point here is that we want to we're laying the groundwork to break the dependency on GitHub. Right now, the only way to get things into Galaxy is you have to put something inside of GitHub into a repo, register it, and then Galaxy goes and pulls your content directly from GitHub. We're laying the groundwork to change that operational model, and we're going to be introducing sometime in the near future a tech preview that allows for push architecture using Pulp as the back end of that. Pulp's a repository for content. So the idea being that you will build a collection artifact and will push it to Galaxy, which will store it in Pulp. And Pulp is another open source project that is led by Red Hat and Red Hat engineers. It's used in satellite and some other products that are out there today, and we're looking to leverage all that great work here and what we're doing with Galaxy. Okay, so that was a lot. I realized a lot of high-level stuff, a lot of big plans. Like I said, this is stuff that we're looking to iterate over time. This is going to happen over years, and so I realize that's a lot. But it's like, okay, great. When are we getting this? Where is it? So the fact is that the details are going to be emerging over time, and so we're disclosing this for the sake of being open, transparent, giving people a heads up, excuse me, of what we're thinking, where we're going with this. So as changes start to come out in Ansible projects and products, you know where we're going with this. And then, like I said, it's going to take us a while, but we've already started. We've done a lot of thinking ahead of time, a lot of internal experiments, and we're starting to implement some of this stuff and introduce it. We've already now today introduced some changes to the Galaxy Hub and are continuing to roll those out there. We've adopted Molecule and Ansible Lint, as I've mentioned, as official Ansible projects, and have started to make improvements to those two tools and have plans to do a lot more over time also. Now, some of the more the collections in Mazer, that's coming in an Ansible version 2.8, and the release candidate for that is due very soon. In the next few weeks, I believe that if you belong to the Ansible Develop and Announce mailing list, you'll see a note go out that the release candidates are available, and these will have the functionality in it to know how to find and load content collections and to do namespace support inside of your place. So that's definitely something to look forward to if you really want to start trying out this stuff. We hope to have a lot more detail and information about how to use collections, how to build collections, how they work, and at a deeper level than I laid out here. We also, I believe we will have some of these role enhancements that we've already talked about in there. I have to go back and look at it. We're nearing code freeze, and I know there are things that it's coming down to the wire, is what I'm trying to say there. For those of you who are interested in the work that actually went into the plugin loader, I have the URL to the pull request. It recently got merged into Devel. So if you want to grab if you can't wait for the release candidate to come out, you can grab what's in Devel and give it a try there. That's, like I said, that plugin loader support, which is the key first step to supporting collections, has been is now in there. It's not off on its own separate branch pull request. So that's what we have on the when. And like I said, more of the things that I talked about at a very high level will be coming out in greater detail over time as we go through. For those of you that want to try this out, or once the release candidate comes out, a lot of different ways to contribute to what we're doing here, or to follow along. I have here a whole list of the different repos where a lot of this activity is happening, in addition to the Ansible core engine and the AWX, our main two projects. There's a lot of work happening and activity in Galaxy, Mazer, Ansible-Lint, and Molecule. If you want to try out what we are developing for Galaxy, if you go to galaxy-dev.ansible.com, that's not quite a nightly build, but very close to it, of what the team is developing as things are becoming ready and that they're trying things out. And if you want to talk about this more, our engineers, the people working on this stuff, and people very active in our community, are in the Ansible Galaxy and the Ansible Molecule IRC channels on Freenode. So please stop on by. And before I ask some questions, I just thought I would make mention that Ansible Fest is coming. This year it's going to be in Atlanta, September 24th to the 26th. I expect a lot of presentations on the functionality will be releasing in 2.8 and a lot more detail around that work that we will be continuing to do in future versions, 2.9 and so forth, will be covered in this. So it's a great event. I hope some of you out there were in Austin last year. We had close to 1,400 people there. We're expecting even more this year. And yeah, definitely check it out. Tickets, I believe, go on sale shortly after Red Hat Summit. So that'd be a little more than a month from now. And the call for papers, if you have something you'd like to share with the community and speak about, will be coming out very shortly. I think in the next couple of weeks. So
that's right.
All right, there you go, Carrie. I was just thinking, where's my notes from Carrie on that one? So yeah, definitely keep an eye out for that. So with that, I'm going to stop and take some questions. We have about 8 minutes.
All right, awesome. We do have some questions in the queue, so
Okay.
I'm just going to go ahead and dive right in.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. Will ad hoc role execution allow for tasks _from to be specified on the command line?
All right, so that's an area where details are still being worked out. But I would, and this is just me taking my best guess, and I've been working with Ansible and since 0.4, so I think I have a pretty good feel is that the answer will be yes, that there'll be some way of doing that. So we introduced it in the module. I don't see why we would limit people from using that in ad hoc execution or ad hoc role execution. So yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Also, there is a note here about getting the slides. So I just want to remind everyone, we'll send out a recording of this. I can link to the slides in the follow-up email that you get. So that'll be coming probably tomorrow. You'll see that land in your inbox.
Yeah.
All right. One other question. This kind of goes back to the beginning of the webinar a little bit. Can you just explain again what batteries included means? Sure.
So batteries included is a concept that I think it was Python. Well, certainly the Python community made popular. I don't know if they were actually the originator, but the idea was that Ansible Python would ship with a lot of pre-built, already existing functionality right in the box, in the package. You didn't get a spare or a sparse system that then you had to fill in and add things to. So, right now, for example, Ansible ships with over 2,400, or actually it will in 2.8, I'm getting ahead of myself, but it'll ship with over 2,400 modules. As soon as you install Ansible, you have those 2,400 modules, and it's running from networking to Unix tools to Windows to cloud, across all those things. As soon as you install Ansible, you don't have to go out and say, okay, I'm working with VMware and I'm working with AWS and I need to work with Cisco gear and I have to go out and grab that package, this package, and that package in order to work with my playbook, and I gotta tell everyone else to do it. That's an example of not being very batteries included. Ansible lets you have it right out of the box. Python did the same thing. They had a lot of functionality and libraries built into Python. As soon as you install Python, you had all type of libraries in there for generating content, for doing different types of math, for doing different types of database interactions, working with XML, working with JSON, all that stuff immediately. So that's the general concept of what we mean by batteries included is, you do whatever, yum install Ansible or pip install Ansible, and boom, you have the engine and all these modules, all these plugins right away. So hopefully that gets the idea across.
Yeah, definitely. All right, here's another one. Will functionality that comes in Ansible 2.8 also work with Ansible Tower at release?
The intent, the hope is yes. There initially will need to be some manual work done, I believe. This is, again, a detail we're still working out. There'll probably be a little bit of manual work that will need to happen and some limitations because of the tower getting used to this new operational model. But the idea is that very shortly after that, a release of tower will become more seamless and frictionless in how tower can work with collections and work with what 2.8 can do with collections.
Great, thank you. All right, will Ansible switch to PowerShell core instead of Windows PowerShell?
Ooh, that is a good question that I don't know the answer to, not being a Windows guy myself. That would be one I would talk to some of the people in the Ansible, the IRC channel on Freenode for Ansible development. Some of our developers that do the Windows work are in there and could tell you more about that.
Thank you. Let's see. Okay, so we've got another one here. This is a little bit involved. Okay. let me read the whole thing. So I have Python 2.6.6 and Ansible 2.6.4 installed on the control server, which is rel 6, and Python 2.7 on the target servers. Should I expect any issues running Ansible playbooks, tasks, custom Ansible modules?
You may run into some problems because at this point we are looking at Python 2.7. A lot of libraries that Ansible uses are only for 2.7. They're from different developers that are out there, and they've all left 2.6 behind. And even 2.7 support is starting to disappear from some of our modules because for the simple reason that these libraries no longer even support 2.7. So you may run into some problems. It's not to say that you definitely will, but I can't say exactly where, but there is the possibility now with not being on 2.7, which is what the lowest that we're supporting and testing for, where you hit some sort of incompatibility.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let me go through. We got a couple more in here, and I know we've just got a few minutes left, so last chance to get your questions in. Can you repost the last GitHub pull request in your last slide?
I could maybe do them one better, and I think they mean this one here.
Okay, yeah, I think you're right.
Pull request 52194. And like I said, that was recently merged, but that has, you can see all the conversation between developers and contributors, and all the different commits being made before it was squashed and merged. Yep. And
now here's one that you might have to pass off to somebody else on the team.
Okay. But all right.
We love and heavily use the reboot plugin in OS. Can we have a similar plugin for network devices? So like a standard reboot plugin for servers and network devices.
Yeah, that is a great question, and I'm also not a network guy. I come from more of a Linux background, and I would need to talk to the network engineers to what they have in store. I know there has been a lot of talk about finding ways of doing things in a platform neutral way in networking gear, because there's enough similarities that they feel that they could come up with something that would make it more frictionless to do the operations that are more generic across, Cisco and Arista and Cumulus gear and things like that. But I don't know what the timeline is for that and if it would cover restarts. Yeah, that's one we would have to get back to you on. I know that there are other channels and things to talk to the people that are working on this stuff and know a lot more about networking equipment than I do.
Okay. And now one quick one before we go. You mentioned pulp briefly. Are you planning to cover that in more detail in the future?
Pulp is a team inside of Red Hat that is outside of the Ansible team. I haven't given a lot of thought to that, or the Pulp team themselves have a lot of material out there already around what they're doing. If you particularly want to look at version 3, which is pretty much a complete rewrite just about of Pulp itself. I wish I had the URL in here, but for future I will add that to it. But I would go to the Pulp the Pulp project homepage, and you'll see where they have I know regular, like they have YouTube video demos of their work, and they have their own IRC channel and things like that I think you'll find a lot of information. But definitely I think maybe we will have to consider doing something once our Galaxy team gets done working with the Pulp team to talk about how that works, and what they did. So that's very much an area that is under construction, so more to come. Sorry, I don't have a better answer than that.
No, that's great. And we are just over the hour now, so we do have to go. But thank you so much, Tim, for this great content, and thank you to everybody who joined us today.
Yeah, thanks to everyone.